And now I'm going to do the Italian bind off for the shoulder sections for the fast neck warmer, and therefore I have to cut the yarn because the Italian bind off is a sewn bind off, and I leave a really long piece, and I give an estimate of like maybe 3 times of what I have knitted so far. So I cut the yarn and I use a tapestry needle. So you can leave the needle on the yarn and can still knit with the tail of yarn you just cut. So the raglan stitch becomes part of the back or front. Then I can remove the stitch marker. I have a short cable here which makes it a little bit complicated, but that's alright. And here I have now my shoulder stitches. You see the 1x1 ribbing, and for the Italian bind off it's very important to start always with a knit stitch. The first stitch has to be a knit stitch, and then you have the typical pattern of the 1x1 ribbing, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, and so on. So now I need my yarn. And I set up the Italian bind off by going through the first knit stitch purlwise. And I try to pull here tight so that you don't have a long stretch of yarn between the back and the shoulder section. This is a purl stitch, so I go in it knitwise. Yeah, because the tail is so long, it requires lots of pulling of yarn. And then I lift the knit stitch of the needle knitwise. I go through the next knit stitch purlwise. And I lift the purl stitch which is in front of it of the needle purlwise. So you always prepare the second stitch in the row, this one, before you lift the first stitch. So I do the same with the knit stitch as I did before, with the purl stitch. I go through it knitwise. And I lift the knit stitch knitwise. I go through the knit stitch purlwise. And I lift the purl stitch purlwise. Go through both stitches from the back to the front. Prepare the purl stitch by going through it knitwise. And lift the knit stitch knitwise off the needle. And it makes sense to combine this movement to get into the swing of it. Let me show you how. Lift this, and before I pull the yarn through, I prepare the next purl stitch by pulling the yarn through knitwise. So in this way I have to tuck the yarn less often. I leave it here on the needle, don't pull the yarn through yet, and combine it with preparing the following stitch. I do this now until the end of the shoulder stitches. So this is now my last stitch before the raglan stitch. I continue as per usual. And now, since I have secured the stitch by going through the stitch purlwise, I can also already lift it off the needle. And now tuck, remove the stitch marker, and I now have lots of yarn left. And I can now continue knitting here. So this raglan stitch will then belong to the front. You can remove the stitch marker here. Don't forget the increase, which is due now for the front. And I will now knit over the front section. Okay, now on to the next shoulder, and here I proceed exactly the same way. I prepare the first knit stitch, and continue binding off the second shoulder. So I can now remove the needle because I bound off both shoulders, but I still have a tail left here and I can use it to knit. So you see now that you have two sections on your circular needle, one for the back and one for the front. Since it's a circular needle, and I know because of the gap when one section is finished knitting, I leave both sections on the needle. If you find that confusing, you can also leave the one that you knit and bind off later onto a piece of scrap yarn. But yeah, let me show you how I would continue now. I still have some tail left, and I use that to keep on knitting some more stitches. So I now used up my tail, and now I have to attach the ball of yarn again. That obviously creates two loose ends that need to be woven in later, but yeah, that's just the way it is. I like to simply tie a knot and weave in the ends later. Because it's blown yarn, I can't really splice it. And now I turn the work around and start with the ribbing for the front or back. So for my front and back, the ribbing starts now, and the first row is a wrong side row. I bring the yarn to the front, lift the stitch purlwise off the needle, and then I start with 1 by 1 ribbing. And that's basically it. Once I reach the end of this row here, I turn around, and so on and so forth. And the result will look like this. So you have a neat bind off, which looks as if the stitches are flowing over the edge. And the good thing, or the necessary thing here for this fast neck warmer, is that this bind off is also very stretchy, because you will do this also at the front and back sections, of course. And if it wouldn't be stretchy enough, it will always start flipping upwards. So also here it's important then also to first have the stretchy bind off, but then also to block the neck warmer. Okay, that's it.